your mind sometimes can create these limitations where you're like, well, this was magnificent, but we're never going to be able to replicate this, right? And then you do.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Alchemie Podcast. I'm your host, Dana Davis. The Alchemie Podcast explores a happier and healthier future for all. Featuring conversations with thought leaders, scientists, and change makers, we'll explore topics at the intersection of individual wellness, social equity, and sustainability. Join us as we look to bridge the gap between personal, community, and planetary well-being. Let's dive in. Hi, everybody. We are excited to have Jamie with us today. Jamie is a passionate entrepreneur and the co-founder of Camp, a hospitality company with a mission to create happier and healthier adults. The team of brilliant teachers from different modalities collaborate daily to create a special place where all humans can truly feel happy and free. With her background in experiential advertising and a personal path of yoga, she is inspired to bring unique humans and ideas together to build Camp. Camp's goal is to bring love, play, and sweat to the Tampa and Los Angeles communities, one adventure at a time. Jamie is excited to continue learning and inspiring thought leaders and build a community of like-minded individuals who share our mission. And I am personally really excited to have Jamie here because not only is she, I guess, quote unquote, my yoga boss here in Los Angeles, but she is also just an amazing, badass female entrepreneur who I have so much respect for. And so I'm really thrilled to be able to share her story with you all, as those who are close to her get to hear it all the time. So Jamie, welcome to the Alchemie Podcast.
Hello. I've started a new thing. We were in this healing retreat this last weekend, and we're now calling it Grand Rising instead of Good Morning. Just because we're not in morning, we're in Grand Rising. So Grand Rising to you, Dana.
I love that, Grand Rising. It just gives a completely different energy to the spirit of the time of day. And yeah.
Yes. Totally.
Okay. Well, I always start off every podcast asking people to share a little bit about themselves. And really the intention is to get to know people in whatever capacity they want to share themselves with their community. So, a little bit about who you are and your journey that led you to who you are today and where you are today.
Okay. Well, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me. And it's just such a gift, not only to do this kind of work, but to do it with you. And you're on such an incredible mission to just share this awakening with the world. So really grateful to be in your presence. I think if I could share with who am I, like what journey am I on? I was raised in Colorado by a family who were like serious adventurers and climbing and hiking and building and creating and touching the earth and living within the earth. And I didn't appreciate that as much when I was younger because it was just the way of being, right? Like we didn't grow up with televisions. We grew up very much like building tree houses and, climbing through Utah and backpacking and watching the stars at night and cooking and dancing and singing and playing music. And then I got older and I went to school in Portland and then I moved to LA and then I moved from LA and lived in the Bahamas for a while and New York. And my career path took me down just kind of this wild journey of advertising, of how a consumer experiences a product, right? And how we can get that to become this fully embodied experience, not only by way of what do we see, but how do we feel it? How do we touch it? How do we interact with it? And that experiential wave of a lot of it was in hotels and products in varying degrees. I think then I landed in New York and I was surrounded by some of the smartest, most passionate women I've ever met in my whole life. And when I got to New York, I was like, oh, I felt this life injected back inside of me that I always knew I had, right? I always knew I had this, I always call it the fempire, like this female power of driving and creating and in that space. And once I got to New York, I was surrounded by just some incredible thought leaders, honestly, who had a huge impact on my life and leaning into authenticity and really that inner knowing and that inner trust that is there and you're kind of born with and you wave through these spaces. And then I just learned so much from this incredible group of people in New York, and it inspired me to kind of take that big leap into what is next. And that was Camp. So, a lot of years of living in a lot of different cities and absorbing knowledge and information and watching other people work and flow in the advertising world helped me build this concept of Camp, and at least the idea of it in its early inception. And me as a consumer in New York, what were all the things that really gave me that feeling of well-being in New York City, right? And it was obviously physical well-being, it was mental well-being, my practice of yoga, and also the higher energy output things, like circuit training and cycling and outdoor activities and all of these things. And I got a really incredible opportunity to go down to Tampa. My husband, we have a restaurant group in Tampa with about 30 restaurants now in Florida. And he and his family just showed me that there's infinite possibilities, right? If you really believe in yourself and whatever you want to build, it's possible to build it. You just got to have the like inner fire to do it, right? And to really drive and to really run with it. And so that gave me a level of confidence and support with my family and also my background. And then this like inner knowing of this feminine energy, and kind of put that into this vortex of this space called camp. And then brought on my business partner, Jen Azzarelli, and we worked outward from there and brought in some incredible human beings. And like I said, in New York, I recognize that surrounding myself with these kinds of people, these kinds of thought-provoking leaders, is how magic starts to really happen. And so we did that in Tampa, right? We collected this group of thought-provoking leaders from our industry and brought them all into one house. And then camp became this just incredible ecosystem. And we dreamt up one day that we would land in LA, and COVID happened, and COVID opened this doorway that was like, oh, wow, this is actually a really interesting opportunity for us to go through this door and expand to California, and who knows what's next. But I don't know, just trusting the path, trusting the inner knowing, being willing to listen at a very deep level so that you can collaborate with everyone who's around you and who's sharing such gifts and such knowledge. And now here we are today, in something that I'm really proud of and really excited to just continue to share and honestly participate in it. It's my life. Camp is my life.
There's so much into that. No, that was great. There's so much into that I want to dig into. And every time I hear your story, there are new little nibbles that come out that are so beautiful. So I'm really excited to get in deeper. But for those who are unfamiliar with camp and maybe aren't from LA or Tampa, aren't really on social media, can you share a little bit about specifically what camp is and, what maybe the different modalities you all offer?
Yes.
No pun intended. Campus.
It's an adventure zone for adults. Yeah. It's the Tampa campus is where it started. We started with just over half an acre of land there, and we were fortunate enough. Our family and our partnership group bought the land, so we had just a lot of ability to create whatever we wanted to create without a lot of limitation. And so we took over the first half property. It was 2 buildings, 7,000 square feet. And I remember in those very early days being like, oh my God, like, what are we going to do with 7,000 square feet? Like, we wanted like maybe 3,500 square feet. We're going to do like a dope yoga studio and then like some kind of a social restaurant element downstairs and maybe cycle and whatever. So it expanded because the property was so expansive. And then that required us to expand our thought process of what could we do with this. So we started there with 3 studios, a cycle studio, circuit studio, which is our metabolic training studio, treadmills, childcare studio, and the yoga house. The yoga house is its own building. And it was really important to us that each building on the campus had its own environment so that when you walked into that lobby, you really understood the ethos and just kind of like the overall essence of that portion of that house. But then when you walked back outside, you were in this circular space that was the energy of the campus itself, and people were crossing paths from all different modalities. So about 11 months in, 4 months in, I remember sitting in the office being like, holy shit, what did we do? We can't make payroll. And then 11 months in, I remember sitting with Jen and being like, the walls are going to break. We're so busy. The bricks are going to explode out of the side. Like, we were so busy. It was uncomfortable. So we ended up taking over another half acre of land next door and added 2 more modalities to the concept. One called Stations, which is a strength training room. And then the other one, which was called Sculpt, which is more calisthenics, body weight movement, smaller movement work. And then we added Pilates. And once we did that, the circle was complete. Like, then the campus became there was this synergy, this flow, this movement, not only in the movement patterns of the body that we were offering to the user, right, in this like well-balanced way of moving your body, but also just in the way that the energy moved on the property, right? And everyone kind of congregated in this center and crossed paths and wove together. And so anyways, it exploded is the truth. And we never knew that it was going to be what it was. And now the Tampa location is just, it's the mothership. It's just like where we create from. It's where we, everything was possible. And then we expanded to LA. And now in LA, I remember we were like, how are we ever going to replicate this? Like, this is not a business that we're going to scale because it needs multiple buildings. It needs 100-year-old oak trees. It needs community gardens. It needs, all these things that made it so special. And your mind sometimes can create these limitations where you're like, well, this was magnificent, but we're never going to be able to replicate this, right? And then you do. And then you find the property that speaks to you. And we took over a property in LA that had 3 different buildings. They were auto parts garages. It took us a long time to convert the usage. But now, when hopefully all of you visit LA or any of the other spaces, it's very similar, right? There's 3 buildings. They look inward toward one another. Each building has its own environment, its own texture, its own feel. And we have a campus in Los Angeles, which is pretty rad. So
yeah, it's so incredible for someone who has been with you all on this long journey that it's been almost 3 years now or more than that in LA.
I think the first, gosh, I'm losing track of time, honestly, maybe 2.5, 3 years. Yeah, since we took over the property and started building one.
I think it was June when I got in contact with you, 2021, I believe. Anyways, but it's just been so incredible to see the community grow so quickly, and really there's this play and adventure truly built, and we'll talk about that in a second. But before we get there, I know you had shared with me a little bit more of the backstory of the name camp, and I know like your history of adventure and travel with your family as a child. But can you share a little bit more about that? You know, where the camp name really came from?
Yeah,
that's a good one.
So I've never been someone that's like, oh yes, let's go to the gym. Like that's just not who I am at all. I want to be outside. I want to be in play. I want to be around people. I want to be doing yoga. I want that feeling of that space. And so when we started to build this thing, we kept calling the property in Tampa the campus, because it literally feels like a college campus in some ways, just because of the way the buildings are and the amount of property we have. And I was still working full-time in New York for MDC Partners at the time, which was a holdings firm that owned advertising agencies. And one of my colleagues, Nikki, hilarious, in another life should have been a stand-up comedian. Her and I always used to play this game when we would drive out to the Hamptons on summer Fridays, because you get to leave by 1:00 and like rush out and then sit in traffic for 4.5 hours to get to West Hampton Beach and then like go back on Sunday morning. And anytime we would see a car with like one of those like toppers, it's like a little structure where people put like all their camping things inside of it, we'd be like, okay, 20 seconds, what's in the topper? And we would just come up with like the most ridiculous, like monkey riding a one-wheeled cycle, or like, we just like come up with these like ridiculous pitch ideas, right? Of like things just to entertain ourselves. So we were moving forward with the project, which we had no name for in Tampa. We were on a plane coming back from New York. I was traveling back down. And I was like, we have to come up with a name for this place, Nikki. I'm like, so let's play the game. Like, let's roll. So we started just like spitfiring like all of these different ridiculous ideas. And at one point we're like, summer camp for adults that love to go to summer camp. And then we're like, what kind of activities? There's so many activities. And we're like firing off all the activities that you can do at summer camp. And then it hit me on the plane that day. One of my favorite directors, I guess, is Wes Anderson. And Wes Anderson did a movie called Moonrise Kingdom. And that movie and some of his other work, it's profound, in my opinion. The way that he uses creativity and color and texture and laughter and play, but also like so much depth in the message that he's bringing across. Like I'm even getting goosebumps right now when I think about, just some of his work and his willingness to sit in it. Like he sits in his work at a different level. And for some reason that day, I was like, we're building our own variation of Moonrise Kingdom, like the color palette, the inspiration of, so if you look at some of our original family photos when we first launched the project, we tried to replicate some of the Moonrise Kingdom photos. Obviously we're far from Wes Anderson, but like, so, and it just took on a life of its own, honestly. We wanted people, instead of saying, oh, Friday, I got to go to the gym, I wanted people to say, oh, on Friday, I'm going to camp. I can't wait to go to camp. On Christmas Day with my family, I can't wait to go to camp. Like, this, or Christmas Eve or whatever. And that's what happened. And all of these time slots where gyms typically didn't do well, we started to excel incredibly well, because it was no longer a like, oh, I got to get my workout in. Yes, that happens, obviously, but it was more about like, this is what I want to do socially with my time. This is how I want to spend my time in this city, and it became something that you do together with your community and people around you. And so now the name camp took on a life that is wild. People are campers. We celebrate camp anniversaries. We go camping together. Like there's just, this year we took our entire leadership team to the Grand Canyon, and we went glamping in the Grand Canyon with our leadership team, just to continue to embody the nature of where we came from.
Yes. I love that so much. Yeah. I mean, and it's Now that I think about it, it's true. There's like all these beautiful touch points in the experience of camp, whether you are a camper that comes and attends or a teacher or, on the executive team, like you get to have this like experience woven throughout it. And it's so intentional, which is so, so, so beautiful. Another thing though, you and I talked a lot about was just like all of these modalities and the value of the physical movement. So like what really made you, I know you come from a yoga background, what made you to decide to kind of incorporate all of these modalities? It could have been so easy for you to just open up a yoga studio, but like what was the value? What was the intention behind having so many different modalities of movement?
I think digging really deep into what holistic well-being really means, right? And too much of anything is not a good thing, but a little bit of a lot of good things is a very good thing, right? And so for my own health, I was a gymnast my whole life, a dancer my whole life, and strength, what was a really important component of that, right? Like it wasn't just about range of motion or flexibility. It was about understanding the body in its strongest form and what was going to support that. So for me, I always tried to write our business. It's going to sound a little bit ego-y, I guess, but like it was like I'm the consumer, and me as the consumer, what do I need in this vessel to prolong a physical well-being for my whole life, right? And that means cardiovascularly being strong and movement and being able to run and breathe deeply, right? And support that blood flow. It meant meditation to calm my mind and be able to understand how to go in and find center. It meant learning how to breathe on a deep level in every posture so that now when I walk into the strength training room, I'm breathing the same way I breathe when I'm in Warrior 2, and so that integration was so important, and that it shouldn't be separate at all, right? Like and so for the physical health, I think just starting to really lean into like what did a well cared for structure feel like and what was necessary to get us in that place. And then secondly, I think accessibility for people. I think that in order for the campus to really work, we get a little bit stuck into compartments, right? Like, oh, you're a yogi, so you're going to go to your yoga studio and you hang out with your yoga people and you stay in that house, right? And then you're someone who loves to lift weights, so you're going to be like the gym weightlifting human and you're going to stay in that house. And what we wanted to do is bring those houses onto the same campus, right? And watch those people cross paths and watch the strength training human who only trains strength step into a restorative yoga class and be like, whoa, what is this feeling of this space? And the person who only does restorative yoga to go into the circuit room and like have dark lights and run and watch yourself sweat and sprint on a treadmill and find these, like, all of our work, right, is like understanding, are we willing to sit in discomfort? Are we willing to get outside of our comfort zone so that we can grow and change? And the only way we're going to do that is if we're exposing ourselves to the infinite possibility, right? And so physical and human beings, all of it was necessary. And now, I feel better than ever. And I hope that the people who come to camp feel better than ever because of it too,
Yeah, totally. And I know that camp is such a special place and it has such a unique energy, specifically thinking like play and adventure. We've talked a lot about that, but like, what is the role, or can you explain to me a little bit more about the role play plays in the community and how valuable that is for people to build community together? Because I know that's such a core tenet to camp.
It's like our core pillar, right? Like it really is. The play is, it's why our original building, we painted like totem poles and hilarious trees and characters and things all over the building. And I remember a guest who's still with us today. She's a good friend now. It's been 8 years, I guess. Am I allowed to curse on this podcast?
Yes. You can say whatever you want.
She walks in the lobby and she goes, "What is this, a fucking kinder care?" And I was like, "Well, hello there." And then she didn't know who I was yet. And I came over and I was like, "No, this is camp, but I'm glad that this brought you in." That, like, they were wondering like if it was a place for kids. And I loved that about what we did, because I wanted to show that we're not going to take ourselves that seriously. And the fitness industry, I use air quotes for the fitness industry, the well-being industry, has a lot of vanity in it, right? And a lot about like only that superficial layer of just how I look when I show up. And could we just totally dissolve that before, like from the onset of booking your first class on the website, because there's so much laughter and play in the language we use in the website that you already feel disarmed. So when you come in, you're ready to do deeper work. You're ready to like tap into something in that space. And then into the summer camp brand, the camp brand, I went to summer camp Jen went to summer camp. Jen like grew up in like incredible summer camps. And there's something about this like freedom when you went away to camp, right? This liberation, this ability to just be your most authentic self. And you walked in and you were able to meet people from a place that was not that first superficial layer, right? When you come into camp, honestly, you don't know for the most part what people do, what, how much money they make, what their background, their experiences. They just come in to show up and be in that space. And then you get to know each other on a deeper level, but it just disarms this layer that I think is not serving us anymore in the wellness industry, right? Because we're all showing up for the same reasons, and to create an environment where we actually genuinely feel like we can show up exactly as we are and have play and laughter within that, really deep work can happen.
Yeah. And what I really love about the experience that you've created is that there's so much, for lack of a better term, like masculine energy in a lot of stereotypical fitness environments. You think of like, it feels inaccessible also for a woman, for example, who might maybe not want to lift heavy weights, but then they get exposed to it through like the Pilates room, like you said, is right next to circuit, and they see other people like them or connect to like-minded people in community like nearby, and it gets them kind of trying out a new thing with a friend that's trying out the circuit room or the stations room. That's not something they're used to, because it can be super intimidating for somebody who's never lifted weights to go into a weightlifting room or even a gym for that matter and lift weights, even though that's so, to your point, so necessary for people to have holistic well-being in their body. It's so important to lift weights over time, but it can be really intimidating. So I think you guys have done an amazing job at creating an environment and a community really that inspires each other to take the next level or to try something different to that point. So it's
awesome.
Beautiful.
I definitely have never touched a sore next weight rig before camp. That's for sure. And now I'm like, I have like 10-pound weights on each side, but I still feel super strong. And
totally. Yeah, I know. Or I'm like traveling and I go to, a little gym room and I'm doing using the weight rack I'm in the room with all
me too.
It's great though, and it's nice to know what you're doing and feel empowered to go in there and understand how to do that work. So you guys are doing fantastic work and bringing the kind of the energy that can feel really masculine or even like really feminine. The yoga room can feel really feminine sometimes and can feel overwhelming for people to step into that space as well. So
totally. And you know what, we don't have this data anymore because we don't really ask the question anymore, about gender or anything like that. But years ago we did, and we were able to pull just like the amount of men that were coming into yoga because of camp was like a profound number. It was like almost at one point 65% of the users coming through the door and or had, regardless of gender, had never set foot into the yoga studio before, right? And now they were doing it because they were like, oh, well, I was already here. I took a treadmill class. Might as well like try and stretch out my hip flexors. And it was like this sneaky warrior to get people into yoga. And now the yoga is like a cornerstone of the company,
Yeah, that's a perfect segue because I feel like the journey of physical well-being and, as you're working up through exploring different other types of things as well and other offerings like meditation and sound and other healing modalities. I was just curious if you talk a little bit more about that journey of, moving from the physical into more of the spiritual space you guys are like tapping into as well.
Yeah. Thanks for asking. It's a big personal life passion for me right now, this exploration of sound meditation and how much impact it's had on my life and wanting to share that now with our community. And I think that one of our core values as a company is always evolving, right? And so what does evolution look like for us in a very physical world, right? And what supports the strength of that physicality and meditation and our mental well-being. The world can be a really intense place these days, right? The fluctuations are intense and there's a lot being pulled outward. And so we have the attention of the community now, right? And how do we help them learn to pay attention? And so learning to pay attention so that we can move really skillfully through our life comes from meditation. And so starting to introduce meditation in ways that feels like something that people are ready to bite off. And I think sound has done that. I think that meditation is such a vast category in itself, right?
Yes.
And how we introduce that to our community was really important. And I think that sound, we've always had this really, if you go back to the play, probably, right? Music in general creates this lightheartedness and this connectivity to your heart and gets you out of the heady space. And sometimes I think some of the meditation can feel very heady, obviously, right? And so the sound, as we start to dive into this and learning how to play these instruments at in very specific ways, and the way that they're tuned and why we're using them and when we're using them and how we're weaving them in with breath, is starting to introduce something very new that I think we're just barely opening the doorway to. I hear that, well, from a little birdie, that you're going to be getting trained in sound this year too, which is amazing.
Yes.
So I'm just really excited to see what happens with it, honestly, because we've just slow trickled it into our studio, whether it be through Shavasana, whether it be through restorative classes and some sound meditation classes. And the amount of people that show up to these, it's wild. I mean, they almost sell out completely every single time. So there's obviously something here that people are A, getting out of it, and B, are curious about this new level of work. And so as long as we're willing to listen, we're trained well enough to listen to what evolution looks like, we'll continue to receive the right kind of downloads and what we share with the community. And so Matt and I, my husband and I, are actually leading a sound meditation this coming Friday night. And we were in a healing ceremony last weekend, which I'll tell you about offline. Was super well. And we met this incredible human being, and her given name is Dancing Bear, but she's a phenomenal drummer, like knock your socks off. And she's actually going to come on Friday night. We're going to do some work together, some like deep shamanic drumming, and like the way it gets you into your body and power. And so, sorry, there was a big ramble, but I don't know how far it's going to go, but I know for sure that we're on the right path with it. And I know for sure that it's bringing in a level of attention and people's ability to pay attention the way that we're trying to gain that from the yoga postures as well. And we're getting people to come to these sessions from all the modalities. They're coming in from all the rooms. It's not just the yoga community, not at all, actually.
Yeah. No, and I think that is a beautiful segue, because so much of what we're trying to accomplish here at Alchemie is to bridge that gap between personal well-being, community well-being, and our planet. And so much of it comes down to paying attention, right? And like being able to pay attention and understanding that a lot of these practices are just helping us understand ourselves better, and understand ourselves in space. So
we're creating a deeper relationship with ourselves,
Exactly. On that note, though, like, how do you feel, or how do you think physical wellness can contribute to the collective well-being of this planet?
I believe we are all one consciousness. We are all one. We're all from the same divine energy source, right? And our ability to start to go inward to recognize that that is inside of us is how we're going to heal consciousness, and how we're going to continue to contribute in a positive way to evolve and heal our energy system. And if our body, our vessel, is not well, it is not supportive, your spine can't move upward clearly, you can't move energy through clearly, the vessel is not well, it's very difficult for us to go into that deeper layer, to be able to tap into like, wow, I am a part of the collective whole, right? We can't see it because whether there's pain or blockages or things that are clearing or not clearing a clear enough path for us to see that. And so the physical well-being, and I don't mean visually perfect, right? I mean your own well-being, to be able to sit or lie in meditation from a clear state without distraction. And the body has to support that. What we eat, how we sleep, how we care for ourselves, what level of strength do we have, and when I was in this healing journey last weekend, I remember we were sitting in meditation with something called hape. It's a sacred tobacco that they shoot up the nose, and then you sit with it in meditation up in the third eye. And I just remember being like, I am so grateful for my strength now, for my spine to be able to sit up like this, and for the energy to flow freely like this.
Yes.
Right. And to be able to touch divine at that level because the vessel was strong enough to hold it. So that's a pretty my experience of it, but I think it's a must. The body is our chariot that's carrying us on our path. And so if we're not able to care for it in the right way or working through these things, it's going to be very challenging for us to go deeper and to heal collectively.
That is so perfectly said and well said, JP. But asking everybody, what is one thing that they can do in this community, or sharing with everyone, what is one thing everybody can do to to have more of this play and movement and community in their life? Like if there's just any kind of wisdom that you can share for or a takeaway, a call to action, what would it be for our community?
The one and only Ram Dass is the human who shared this. I'm going to mess it up. I don't remember exactly how he said it, but the best thing that I can do for you is to heal myself. And the best thing you can do for me is to heal yourself. And if we both can come from that state of healing, we will collectively heal the ecosystem.
Snaps. So spot on. I might need to get with that quote and pull it and put it on our social, because I try to pull these really beautiful quotes. Jamie, that was beautiful end to our conversation. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your voice and your energy. It's for those who are in LA, I highly recommend getting into Jamie's class. Her energy is palpable and so beautiful. Also, sound sessions are amazing. Everything at camp is fun and beautiful. So if you are either in Tampa or LA, check them out. But thank you again for being here. It means the world.
Thank you, Dana. I love you. Thank you.
I love you too. Have a good one.
Thanks for listening to the Alchemie Podcast. If you enjoyed our conversation today, you can find more about the speaker in our show notes below. In order to build a global community committed to well-being for all, we need your help. So please rate and subscribe to wherever you're listening from. Finally, we could not do this without the help of our amazing team. A huge thank you and shout out to Lindsay Todd, our producer. All right, y'all, have a lovely, lovely day.